The Oak Island team opened a forbidden tunnel they were never meant to access, one sealed for centuries, hidden beneath layers of collapsed stone and protected by a flooding system far more advanced than anyone expected. What they found inside wasn't treasure, wasn't tools, and wasn't anything the experts had prepared for. Before we break down what really happened, make sure to subscribe, because what comes next may rewrite the entire Oak Island mystery. The breakthrough didn't come from a dramatic dig or a lucky strike. Ironically, it started with something everyone else had overlooked. The Oak Island crew had been reviewing last season's seismic scans, trying to pinpoint the exact shape of what they believed was a rectangular chamber beneath the money pit. Nothing in the data suggested a new lead until a technician noticed an anomaly buried so deep in the readings that it shouldn't have been visible at all. It was a thin, perfectly linear void running beneath layers of collapsed stone, a formation that didn't resemble any natural fracture or sink channel known on Oak Island. The outline was too clean, too controlled, almost engineered. At first, the team thought it was a distortion in the data, a false reflection caused by saturated soil. But when they reran the scan using the newer, higher-frequency equipment, the anomaly didn't disappear. It sharpened. The tunnel was real, and it wasn't part of the documented flood system. It ran parallel to it, deeper, hidden between two geological layers, where no one should have been able to dig centuries ago. Rick Lagina was the first to react, leaning over the monitor with a look that blended fascination and dread. He'd spent years trying to prove Oak Island's secrets were far older and far more sophisticated than mainstream history claimed. And now, here was evidence. A straight, reinforced corridor, buried in an era long before modern engineering existed. When the drill team lowered a test shaft toward the anomaly, the bit passed through dense clay, then brick-like material, and finally a hollow space that caused the torque to drop instantly. The crew froze. Cameras rolled. You could hear the tension in every breath. They had hit a tunnel no one even knew existed. Then came the detail that changed everything. The tunnel wasn't empty. The borehole camera revealed smooth walls carved by tools, not water, covered in sediment that hadn't been disturbed in centuries. Strange mineral deposits clung to the ceiling like frost, and at the far end of the camera's limited view, a mass of stacked stones formed a perfect artificial barrier. Someone built a tunnel beneath Oak Island and then intentionally sealed it. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a collapse. It was a warning, and the team had just opened the first crack in a mystery that was never meant to be found. The moment the team cleared the last layer of stone around the borehole and prepared to cut an access channel into the forbidden tunnel, the island responded in a way none of them had experienced before. It began with a shift, subtle, almost like the ground exhaling, but enough to send loose gravel sliding across the boards. Then a cold draft rose from the opening, brushing past the crew's faces with a chill that felt unnaturally deep, as if it had traveled through untouched chambers far beneath their feet. Rick ordered a quick environmental reading. The temperature inside the void was dropping fast, far faster than the soil around it should allow. Seconds later, every radio crackled with static. Communications began to break down. And when Gary Drayton swept the borehole perimeter with his detector, expecting mild interference, the device erupted with an overload so violent he nearly dropped it. The machine screamed with metal signatures coming from every direction, bouncing off readings so dense it sounded like an electrical storm beneath the earth. Marty tried to calm the team, insisting it was just mineral deposits or old iron hardware. But the data didn't support that. The signatures weren't scattered. They were concentrated, aligned along the tunnel walls, as if someone had fused metal into the passage intentionally. Wanting more clarity, the crew inserted a second, high-definition camera into the opening. At first, the narrow beam of light revealed only dust drifting through cold air. But as the camera advanced deeper, the walls came into view. Smooth, polished surfaces carved with precision no early settlers should have possessed. The geometry was too perfect, too controlled. This wasn't a rough attempt at tunneling. It was engineered architecture. Then the feed glitched. Not a typical signal drop, a jolt, a violent, concussive distortion that warped the video for a split second. When the picture returned, the camera was pointed at the barrier at the tunnel's far end, a wall built from stacked stone blocks, fitted so tightly together that even the camera's microlights couldn't reveal the seams. The stones were coated in the same strange clay detected earlier, a waterproofing mixture far ahead of its time. The crew watched as dust drifted across its surface until the entire wall shuddered. Just one small vibration, but enough for the camera to shake. The tunnel had reacted, not to air pressure, not to machinery, but to the team's presence. Rick stepped back from the monitor. "This isn't just a passage," he whispered. "It's protected." And with that realization, a chilling truth took root. If the tunnel was built to keep something out, what was it desperately trying to keep in? The decision to breach the sealed barrier wasn't made lightly. Every expert on site understood that the wall at the end of the forbidden tunnel wasn't a collapse or accident. It was constructed with intent. Someone in the distant past engineered the obstruction using limestone blocks, coated in a reddish clay, packed so densely it formed an airtight seal. The mixture perplexed the chemists. Part waterproofing compound, part binding agent, part something they couldn't identify at all. Whatever its purpose, it had done its job for centuries. The crew assembled a specialized drilling rig to create a small breach without collapsing the entire tunnel system. As the bit carved into the face of the barrier, the stone groaned with a deep, resonant vibration that sounded almost alive, echoing through the borehole like a warning roar from another age. Dust drifted upward in slow spirals, catching the light in eerie floating patterns. The air grew colder, heavier. Even the seasoned drill operators exchanged uneasy glances. Oak Island had never behaved like this. At precisely 16 inches into the barrier, the drill punched through. Instantly, everything changed. A blast of air burst from the opening, not chilled like before, but warm, unnaturally warm, as though it had been trapped in a sealed chamber far below the earth. The fogging condensation on the camera lens appeared and vanished in the same breath. Then came the sound, a low metallic groan that didn't originate from the drill, the rig, or the rock. It came from within the tunnel. Rick's eyes widened. Marty stepped closer, trying to identify the vibration. But before anyone could react, the newly formed breach widened on its own, as if internal pressure had been waiting centuries for a release. When the dust settled and the camera pushed forward, the truth emerged. The wall had not been a simple divider. It was a gate. Beyond it, the tunnel plunged downward into a steep, expertly carved slope. The angle was measured, almost too precise. The walls bore the same smooth finishing seen earlier, but here the tool marks were sharper, deeper, more deliberate. Whoever had dug this tunnel had done so with a clear purpose. They weren't trying to reach the surface. They were trying to reach something buried far below. Laser mapping revealed that the descending tunnel pointed directly toward a region beneath the money pit, an area believed unreachable due to historical collapses and water intrusion. Yet here was a corridor that bypassed everything, hidden so deeply that no explorer in over 2 centuries had found it. Rick whispered the words hanging over everyone. This isn't a treasure shaft, a beat. It's access. Access to what? No one yet knew. But as the camera light pierced deeper into the darkness, the answer felt closer and infinitely more dangerous than ever before. The team knew the steep drop into the newly exposed tunnel was too dangerous for a direct entry, so they deployed the rover, a compact, track-driven robot equipped with floodlights, ultrasonic mapping, and a reinforced chassis engineered for underground instability. As the rover lowered into the darkness, the camera feed flickered, then stabilized, revealing the smooth, sloping walls that seemed almost engineered rather than carved. Every angle, every contour was consistent, as though built from a blueprint far beyond the crude tools of early settlers. Halfway down, the rover's sensors began picking up cavities branching off from the main passage. At first, first, they appeared as small disruptions on the scan, natural voids, perhaps. But as the rover edged closer, the truth came into view. These weren't accidents of geology. They were alcoves, symmetrical recesses carved into the tunnel wall. Some were sealed with stone, others partially collapsed, but all shared the same precise dimensions. One alcove, however, wasn't sealed. When the rover angled its lights inside, the team saw remnants of timber braces charred black with age, metal rings fused into the rock, and what looked like shattered supports scattered across the floor. This wasn't debris from digging. It was the remnants of a mechanism, possibly a trap system designed to collapse the tunnel if triggered. The realization sent a chill through the crew. If this was a trap, then the tunnel wasn't a simple passage. It was a protected route, a last resort route. The rover continued deeper, its treads grinding softly against the limestone floor. The humidity rose sharply, condensing on the lens in thick droplets. Rick toggled the wiper system, watching the moisture clear to reveal the next section of tunnel, one marked by long parallel grooves carved into the stone. The grooves were straight, evenly spaced, and far too uniform to be natural. Archaeologists on the remote feed speculated they could be the marks of sled runners or rails cut into stone. Centuries before such technology should have existed on the island. As the rover advanced, the floor stabilized and the tunnel curved sharply to the right. The camera rotated, and there it was, another barrier. But unlike the first, this one wasn't stone. It wasn't wood. It wasn't clay-reinforced masonry. It was metal, a towering metallic wall stretching from floor to ceiling, its surface dulled with age, yet unmistakably man-made. The rover's floodlights glinted off faint geometric markings, intersecting triangles and lines etched with precise angles that suggested mathematical knowledge far beyond what Oak Island's known builders possessed. Rick leaned closer to the monitor, whispering, "This shouldn't exist. Not here. Not in this century." No one disagreed, because deep beneath the island, hidden behind ancient stone and sabotage systems, the crew had reached something impossible, something that shouldn't be underground, shouldn't be on Oak Island, and maybe shouldn't be found at all. And the deeper they stared at the metallic surface, the more one thing became clear. This wasn't just hiding a secret, it was guarding it. The team stared at the rover feed in disbelief. A metallic wall buried this deep beneath Oak Island was not just unexpected, it was impossible. No colonial settlers, no pirates, no secret society from the 1600s or 1700s had the means to construct something like this. The surface of the barrier wasn't crude or weathered, but smooth and intentionally shaped, reflecting the rover's lights with a dull sheen that suggested an alloy far more advanced than iron or early steel. Chemical readings only deepened the mystery. The rover's onboard sensors detected magnetic signatures rising and falling in irregular pulses, almost like the wall itself was responding to their presence. It wasn't simply metal, it was engineered, layered, purposeful. When the camera zoomed in, faint markings became visible, not carvings made by hand, but etched patterns, intersecting triangles, straight lines, repeating angles that looked like fragments of a cipher. One archaeologist watching remotely compared them to early navigational glyphs, while another insisted they resembled Proto-Templar mapping symbols. But even those theories fell apart when the rover scanned further. The markings weren't random. They formed a repeating sequence, a geometric language that suggested measurement, calibration, or warning. Rick's voice dropped to a whisper. "This looks coordinated." Before the team could analyze the inscriptions further, the rover detected vibration, light, steady, rhythmic, not from drilling, not from movement above, from behind the wall. A soft, deliberate thrum that grew stronger with each passing second. Marty leaned in, eyes wide. "It's not natural. Something's generating that." A sudden spike hit the sensors, rattling the rover's frame. Sediment drifted from the ceiling as the wall released a metallic groan, the kind of sound metal makes when it shifts under pressure. But pressure from what? The readings made one thing absolutely clear. Whatever lay behind that barrier wasn't dormant. And if the wall was built to keep something contained, then opening it might be the most dangerous decision the Oak Island team had ever faced. With With the metallic barrier vibrating harder by the minute, the team knew they had a narrow window to investigate before the tunnel became too unstable to enter. Engineers used a hydraulic spreader to push against the weakest seam detected by thermal imaging. At first, nothing happened. The wall resisted every inch of pressure, bending but not breaking, far stronger than any alloy expected to exist beneath Oak Island. Then, with a sharp metallic snap, the seam fractured. A rush of trapped air burst outward, warm, stale, carrying the heavy scent of minerals and something older. The rover's lens fogged instantly before clearing to reveal what lay beyond. A chamber, far larger than any underground space previously mapped, opened into view. The walls were carved directly into bedrock, smoothed with a precision that defied hand tool. Wooden platforms once lining the perimeter had collapsed into rotted skeletons, scattering fragments across the stone floor. Rusted chains hung from anchor points cut high into the wall, swaying slightly, as if disturbed for the first time in centuries. But the center of the chamber seized the team's attention. A circular depression filled with perfectly still water, so smooth it reflected the rover's lights like black glass. Around the basin, carved shelves lined the stone, empty shelves. Whatever had been stored here was long gone, removed with careful intent. Then the camera tilted upward. Symbols etched above the shelves glowed faintly under the rover's lights. Ancient, angular markings not tied to English, French, Latin, or any colonial script. One symbol repeated more than the rest, an eye enclosed within a triangle. Rick swallowed hard. If this was the vault, his sentence trailed off, because the vault was empty. And yet, the unsettling stillness of the chamber made one thing certain. Something had once been here, something important enough to bury deeper than any treasure. And whatever it was, someone took it. At first, the team thought the water at the center of the chamber was just groundwater, ordinary, still, and silent. But as the rover adjusted its position for a better angle, the surface trembled. A single ripple formed, traveled outward, then vanished. No air drafts, no falling debris, no movement from the rover could explain it. Then it happened again. A second ripple, this time rhythmic, a pulse. Rick leaned closer to the monitor, brow furrowing. "That's not random," he muttered. And he was right. The ripples were following a pattern. 2 pulses, a pause, then one deep tremor that sent a faint ring across the basin. It looked almost like the chamber itself was responding to the intrusion, communicating in vibrations. The rover's sensors confirmed a deeper cavity beneath the stone floor, directly under the pool. A hollow space, massive, unmapped, and filled with something denser than water. As the sonar pinged again, the signal returned distorted, as if bouncing off something moving. The team went silent. Another ripple rose to the surface, larger this time. The vibration that accompanied it traveled up through the rover's treads and into the surrounding floor, shaking dust from the cavern walls. A low, resonant hum echoed through the chamber, neither mechanical nor geological, but something in between, like pressure shifting within a confined system. Gary whispered what everyone else was thinking. "Something's down there." Before anyone could respond, the ripple pattern accelerated. The water trembled in quickening pulses, each stronger than the last. The chamber's walls vibrated, sending small rock fragments falling into the pool. And then, the water bulged upward in a slow, unnatural swell. Not boiling, not splashing, rising, as though something beneath Oak Island was pushing up against it. The chamber wasn't just a vault, it was a lid, and whatever it was, holding back, was waking up. The moment the water in the chamber began to swell upward, the rover's sensors spiked off the charts. The temperature plummeted 5 degrees in under 10 seconds. Pressure inside the chamber surged, bending the rover's frame as though invisible hands were squeezing the air itself. Before the crew could react, a deep vibration rolled through the floor, slow, heavy, and deliberate, like the heartbeat of something buried far beneath the island. Rick ordered the rover pulled back, but the machine barely moved. Its treads vibrated violently as the chamber's resonance grew stronger. The water dome thickened, glistening under the floodlights, before collapsing in a sharp downward pull, as if something below had inhaled. The ripple that followed traveled up the walls, triggering small fractures in the stone, dust raining from the ceiling in dry, brittle sheets. Gary's voice broke the silence. "Guys, this chamber isn't empty. It never was." Another sonar ping fired into the depths, this time returning a perfectly spherical echo. Not rock, not sediment, something solid, something engineered, and it was rising. A sudden boom thundered through the cavern, followed by a shock wave that knocked the rover onto its side. The metallic barrier behind them vibrated violently, as though reacting in tandem with the chamber. For a brief moment, the lights caught something beneath the water, a faint outline, curved and metallic, shifting in the dark before sinking back into the depths. That was the final signal. The team ordered a full retreat. The rover feed cut to static as the chamber floor shuddered. A second, more violent tremor ripped through the tunnel, collapsing one of the alcove walls and sending a cloud of dust blasting through the borehole. Alarms screamed across the surface as the ground outside trembled in a rolling wave, rippling outward from the money pit toward the forbidden tunnel. Workers scrambled back as stones cracked, soil shifted, and the entrance they had spent days opening sealed itself in mere seconds. Nature, or something far older, erasing the path back down. When the vibration finally died, only silence filled the sight. The tunnel was gone, the chamber sealed again. Whatever lay beneath that rising pool had been awakened, but not released. Rick looked toward the now buried access point, voice low, almost shaken. "We didn't just find a vault. We triggered a system." Something down there responded. And with that, the Oak Island mystery shifted forever. Because for the first time in the island's long, tangled history, the treasure wasn't the most dangerous thing hidden underground. Something deeper was, something alive with purpose, and it had just let the team know they were not welcome.